Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Matt Garvey and we are here to talk about making comics today. And in today's video we are going to be discussing that controversial Disney Plus documentary Marvel 616, especially the episode that is called The Marvel Method, featuring Dan Slott. So let's go. Okay, so why am I making this video? Well, if you are new to this channel, don't forget to give us a like, share and a subscribe. But if you are new, what my channel does is I break down my comic making process of, what I do when I'm putting my comics together. And I watched this documentary on Saturday after I saw Twitter just blow up. And, Dan Slott got so much heat from people saying that, he's a terrible writer. He doesn't respect his fellow creators and stuff like this. He shouldn't be using the Marvel method to write comics and stuff like that. And you know what? I thought I'm going to watch this myself and I'm going to, look at it objectively and, put this video together to show how, even though I really did enjoy this documentary, and if you haven't seen it, I advise you to go and watch it because it is very, very enjoyable. But just like all documentaries, the filmmakers are playing a little bit fast and loose with the truth of how they show stuff, and this is done for dramatic effect. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to break down a few of the key scenes from this documentary and show you how the filmmakers put it together and show you why some bits are true, other bits are done just to keep us entertained as an audience. So that is the reason for this video, and I hope you like it. But disclaimer, as I said, if you have not seen this documentary, please go and watch it because I don't want to spoil it for you. Also, guys, for complete transparency, I do not know any of the creators in this documentary. I've never spoken to them in real life. I've never met them at a Comic-Con. The closest I have ever come to interacting with any of them is I followed Tom and I followed Dan on Twitter. And if you don't follow them, you should, because they are super lovely guys. With regards to Dan's work personally, to show that, I'm a devoted Dan fan and I will defend him to the end of the days. I haven't really read a lot of Dan's work. I'm not really a Spider-Man guy. I haven't really read much. Daredevil was always my character to go to. However, I have read Dan's Superior Spider-Man arc, and I'll be honest with you, I actually kind of liked it. For someone that wasn't a huge Spider-Man guy, I didn't have to, read 700 issues, to jump into a story. So I find that quite nice as a new reader. And I know it upset a lot of people when he killed Peter Parker. But you know what, guys? It's comics. When someone dies, they're going to bring them back. So that is all the work that I've read from Dan. So, hopefully you can tell that I'm not this, crazy, Dan cheerleader. I just wanted to make this video because he's super nice on Twitter. From what I've read, he's a really nice guy and he doesn't deserve this abuse, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to go through certain key scenes in this documentary and we're going to break it down and I'm going to show you how the filmmakers go about making it to make it more engaging for you and for me, okay? So if you haven't seen it, go watch it because I don't want to spoil it for you. And then once you watch it, then come back and start it from this moment. But we're going to dive into it now. Okay, so when the documentary starts, we open with Dan sitting at what appears to be his desk, struggling to write the first issue of a new miniseries that he's writing called Iron Man 2020, which is a character that first appeared in 1984. But is this his house or apartment, and is this his office? I'm going to say no. And this is purely my opinion, and again, you can disagree with me all you want. But look here, this is an office, where I'm working here right now. I've got pictures around, I've got comics behind me. Dan's office appears to be just a desk in front of an exposed brick wall with some nice bright windows, for lighting. In my opinion, this is either, a set in a studio, or it's a location they've hired purely for the visuals, for like the exposed brick and that kind of thing, where the filmmakers can set it up to look like an office where they can control the environment more. So what do I mean by controlling the environment? Well, this is a film crew making a documentary, right? And, you are going to have at least, 5 or 6 people in a filmmaking crew to do this. You're going to have the director, producer, maybe the script writer in this case. You're going to have a boom operator, holding, the sound, or, people are going to be mic'd up for sound, that kind of thing, but you need someone to monitor that, as well as the camera person. So there are a lot of people involved in a filmmaking process. And this is not a natural environment because they have too much control of how the scene actually looks. I mean, this is my office and I know that I'm not a superstar writer with, a massive apartment. But, this is a realistic office. I've got pictures behind me, I've got a lot of comics, whereas Dan has only got a couple of comics and a couple of Funkos on his desk, and the Funkos are facing out away from him rather than facing towards him because, that's what you do when you have Funkos. You don't want them looking at you and to enjoy them. You want them facing away. So It doesn't look genuine to me. Also, you can tell that the filmmakers are controlling the lights, because not only do you have the light sources behind him coming through the big windows, but you know, they have that nice little red light come into the side of his face, you know, when he's struggling to write the story. Again, you know, this takes space, this takes time to do, and this is not a natural setup for someone that's actually going about writing a comic. And talking about controlled environments, I've purposely filmed this part of the section of the video later on in the day, because I've still got my, you know, my fill light and my key light here going on, but the light behind me and the light coming in through my windows actually changed during the day. You know, it's gone from, you know, the sun being out to it being quite overcast, and that shows you that, you know, this has happened over a time scale. Whereas the video that you see of Dan, the light's been consistent the whole way through, which means they've got a better studio environment where they have controlled the lights. Also, you have a narration from Dan as he's struggling to write this comic with his 12-week deadline. That's recorded after, because his lips are not moving, he is not talking as he's writing. So this is done later on and added on the top of it, again, which takes time, which shows that this is put together like a film rather than an actual documentary. Also, in this scene, I want you to take special notice of what Dan is actually writing as well, because as he's writing, the words of the script appear above his head, like these ideas are popping into his head as well. I just want you to take special notice of what he's writing and how he's writing it, because we are going to refer back to that a little bit later. But we're going to move on. Okay, so we then cut to Dan walking through New York, which is nothing, you know, strange there. You know, it's a guy walking to his office, you know, at Marvel, that kind of thing. But what we need to pay attention to is, because this is a small documentary film crew that's filming, you know, Dan on, you know, in his daily routine, you'll notice that the camera starts from him forwards, and then it will film from him from behind, and then it will film him from the side, and that kind of thing. Again, this is stuff that takes time, and because, you know, the documentary film crew will probably have one camera and they may have a spare as a backup, you need to look about the positioning of the camera, because it takes time to film from multiple angles. And if they had more than one camera, when Dan's walking towards the camera, you would probably see the camera behind and vice versa. So this shows you that the camera crew are taking their time to get as much coverage filming Dan, and this is the kind of thing you would not do or allow yourself to be filmed in if you're on a very, very tight deadline. And there's a very specific reason why the filmmakers have chose to show Dan walking down the street, you know, front ways on, and then from the back, and then from the side. And it is the exact same reason as YouTubers when we cut from a shot like this to a shot like this, or we cut away to something like this. And this is done because as humans, our attention span is actually very, very small. So the more we, you know, change the image of what you're actually seeing as an audience, it keeps you more engaged. So this actually shows that this documentary is probably not the fly-on-the-wall documentary you actually think it is, and is more of a manufactured product. And this is also duplicated when Dan arrives at the Marvel offices as well, because, you know, previously he's walking around New York with, you know, with his big coat on and his earphones on, you know, reacting to Spider-Man, you know, hamming it up for the camera, having a whale of a time because he's an extrovert and he's loving being on camera. But when he gets to the Marvel offices, you can see that his coat's gone, his earphones are gone, and he has just arrived. That doesn't happen. You know, this is not a fly-on-the-wall documentary where you show someone arriving. You know, the filmmakers have made a specific shot choice of seeing him arrive at the Marvel offices. And again, like the walking around from New York, the shots change. You know, you've got him walking around saying hello from the front. You've got him walking around saying hello from the back as well. But the key thing to remember about this scene is when Dan arrives at Tom's office, because as you notice, you will see a shot of Dan arriving, you know, banging on the window. Then it will cut to a scene from inside Tom's office, filming Dan banging on the window and Tom's reaction to it. Again, one camera. You know, that camera, they've chosen that shot of him arriving and that one from Tom reacting to it. Again, it shows you that this is all fabricated for comedy effect, for drama effect. This technique's used a lot in, you know, reality TV shows as well, where you will see like the presenter sneak up to, you know, a contestant's house to show that, you know, they've made it into, you know, the final five, and they will knock on the door, and then suddenly, you know, there'll be a camera crew inside that person's house filming over the shoulder so they can get the presenter's face in as, you know, the contestant goes, "Oh my God, I've made it into the show," that kind of thing. You know, did you not think she would be a little bit suspicious that there was a camera crew already inside her house? No. Again, great technique used by filmmakers. So then we cut to Dan and Tom having a chat, and you can see they're both having a whale of a time, you know, having the banter between them, and Tom is giving Dan, you know, a kick in the bum because, you know, they're 12 weeks away from their deadline, and apparently Dan has absolutely nothing. However, you can tell they're enjoying this, and in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, I reckon at this point, the comic is already done. Why do I say that? Well, after this conversation, it cuts to a shot of the Marvel offices, and there's a bookcase there with all these papers spread out on top of it. If you look close enough, that's the entire comic. You know, you've got the cover, you've got the artwork that's coloured and lettered as well, and that's either been filmed and added in by mistake there, you know, and it might have been filmed, you know, like a month later when the actual, or 3 months later when the comic is actually finished. But in my opinion, at this point, this comic is done, because if Dan was so bad at his job, he would not be working in comics for 30 years, okay? And yes, I'm sure in those 30 years, he's probably missed a few deadlines, but obviously his reputation and, you know, his work ethic has kept him working for Marvel for a long time. We then cut to Tom, you know, addressing the camera directly, you know, in an interview style situation where he's talking quite candidly about Dan and his approach to making comics, and how can I put it in the nicest way, that, you know, Dan has, shall we say, a very laissez-faire attitude when it comes to, you know, deadlines and getting his work in. And again, there may be some truth to that, but, you know, if you as a professional person, you are not going to badmouth your fellow creators, especially to the camera, and especially to a documentary film crew that work for the company that owns your company. It would be career suicide. So what I'm saying is, please take this with a pinch of salt. But also, Tom also talks about, you know, Dan's way of writing comics, which is a style of writing called the Marvel method, which I've covered in a previous video. And if you have not seen that, I will put a link into the description. And, you know, I've seen Dan get a lot of abuse over the last, you know, week or so with regards to the Marvel method. And, you know, it's a way that, you know, you shouldn't write comics. And while it's not something that I'd personally do, I tend to write full script, and the majority of writers out there do. But saying that, some of my favourite comics I have ever read have been done in the Marvel method. As I said before, I have read Dan's Superior Spider-Man. If that is done Marvel method, it worked. One of my absolute favourite comics of all time is, you know, Matt Fraction and David Ayer's, you know, Hawkeye, you know, My Life as a Weapon. It was written Marvel style. So if you haven't read it, totally check this out as well. So, you know, whether you're a purist and you think, you know, you have to write full script, that kind of thing, and you hate Marvel method, there is a place for it, and it does actually work. And what we'll see later when we get introduced to Pete, the artist on the project, he likes this. And he likes this method because it gives him more freedom as an artist to, you know, help add to the story. So my one caveat is if you are going to write Marvel method, and you know someone that is writing Marvel method and the artist is totally on board with that, what I would suggest is that you make it in place that the artist also gets a full writing credit on the comic as well, because, you know, they are working as hard, if not more, than the writer to create that story. They are writing that story visually as you're giving them the outline. And speaking of the Marvel method, do you remember at the beginning of the video I asked you to pay special attention to the words that were appearing over Dan's head when he was writing the comic? Dan was writing page 1, panel 1, and then writing a panel description. That is not Marvel method. That is full script. Dan doesn't write full script. Dan writes Marvel method, which shows you what he's actually writing in this section, and what's appearing behind him and what he's narrating later on in post-production is not actually what's happening on the screen, which again shows you what's actually happening in this documentary is not 100% accurate, and they are playing fast and loose with the truth. So then we cut from Tom and Dan in the offices of New York, explaining that Dan has written nothing, and we go all the way over to the coast of LA where we're introduced to Pete Woods, who is the artist on Iron Man 2020. And while the filmmakers are interviewing Pete Woods, you know, of his lifestyle of, you know, driving around California, you know, in his truck and his caravan hitched to the back, he's actually drawing the comic. So if Dan has written nothing, how is he drawing the comic? Which means that this section is either filmed way before the stuff in New York when Dan has actually finished the script, or way after the script is done and the film crew have flown from, you know, New York to LA, because they don't have two film crews filming at the same time. It's just not how documentaries are made. In fact, as I was watching this documentary for the first time, I was live tweeting how I thought this documentary may be playing loose and fast with the truth, And again, I know none of the creators in this documentary, and somehow Pete Woods saw one of my tweets and he actually responded confirming that, you know, not everything you see on screen is 100% true. And then we cut to Tom in the Marvel offices saying that, you know, we've had to bring a second writer in, Christos Gage, to help Dan get this comic finished and across the line. And sorry to tell you this, guys, but that is actually quite false. It is not uncommon for writers to work together on a comic. You know, some great examples of this in recent years are, you know, Nick Spencer and Robert Kirkman on Thief of Thieves, and, you know, Scott Snyder and James Tynion on, you know, stuff like Talon for DC. We then cut to Joe Caramagna, who is the letterer on Iron Man 2020, and he is waiting for the script to come over from, you know, Dan and Christos and the editors to go, do you know what, these are the words that we want on the page before it goes off to the printer. And this is probably the part of the documentary that's probably the most truthful in regards to, you know, not for this story, but I know letterers that, you know, get, you know, creators that miss deadlines and then they send the stuff over right at the last minute, and unfortunately the letterer has to move their schedule to try and shoehorn a project in that needs to get to print. But for the sake of this documentary, I don't believe it to be true, because I don't believe in coincidences. I mean, if we take this, you know, where we've been through this whole documentary, we've gone from, you know, New York to LA, and we are now in New Jersey, we are filming with Joe, and then he suddenly gets an email for changes. It's done for dramatic effect, it's done to create tension and show, you know, that stuff goes right to the wire with regards to comic production. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but for the sake of, you know, the 616, this is false. And then for the magic of TV, you know, the comic is finished just in time, you know, and is sent to the printer, you know, day before the launch event. And I'm not saying that, you know, short print runs are not created for, you know, launch events, because I'm sure that does actually happen. But the majority of the time, you know, comics are solicited, you know, months in advance through the previews book, you know, and comic shops, you know, put their order in, and then they get sent to the distributor, and then that distributor on, you know, a multinational level sends those comics out to comic shops. But, you know, for the magic of TV, Danny's there with the comic for the signing, and, you know, according to the internet, this comic came out in January 2020, but when Dan arrives at the signing, it's winter. I've been to New York in winter, and it's bloody cold, and if you look at that audience of people, you know, waiting for this signing, I do not see one woolly hat, one big winter coat, or a pair of gloves between them. So it shows you that, you know, this signing may not have happened the very next day. So what I want you to take away from this video is you know, just keep an open mind, and remember, you know, not everything we see on the screen is, you know, 100% accurate. Sometimes what we see is done for dramatic effect and done to entertain us as an audience. You know, this isn't a documentary, this is docutainment. And if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, because it's very enjoyable. And you know what, be nice to creators that you see and stuff like this, because, you know, Dan is a great writer. He's been doing this for 30 years, and he has taken a dramatic bullet for the sake of entertainment, you know, shown himself in a comedic, you know, bad light to entertain us. It's not genuine, okay? So if you have sent him a nasty message, or you have put something mean online about it after, do me a favour, just retract it, because, you know, when you go out there and you start making your own comics or your own art or your own documentaries, you'd hate someone being mean to you. So please don't do that to other people. Instead of talking about something negative, you know, go and, you know, watch or read something, you know, you really do like, and talk about something positive online, okay? So that's what I wanted to do with this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know, give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, and a subscribe. I will see you in the next video. And please remember, if I can make comics, anyone can. I will see you in the next video. Take care.